Okay, so thank you so much, ladies, for joining in. Welcome everyone to the conversation room. We're very happy to welcome you to the second edition of FIAC online viewing room. And this is happening for the 47th edition of FIAC at the Grand Palais Éphémère. The conversation room is happening all online this year, and we're very happy to host this panel about the vibrant scene of Saudi Arabia. I'm going to very briefly introduce all the panelists here in this powerful woman house. Coming soon, Saudi Arabia's new cultural landscape and the communities cultivating them. First and foremost, Sara Al-Omran from Jameel in Hayy. Welcome to the panel. Hayy Al-Bakri, CEO of Ad-Diriyah Biennale. We cannot wait to hear all about what you're doing in Riyadh. Manal AlDowayan, it's such a pleasure to have you. We cannot wait to hear everything that you have in your show at Galerie Van der Eyden in Dubai. And Zain MasudArt, art advisor, strategist, former international director of India Art Fair. Thank you so much for moderating the panel. I'm going to hand over to Zain for the beginning of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for the kind introduction. And I would like to also extend our thanks to FIAC for hosting us today, and to Jennifer Flay and Charlotte Ardon for the invitation to participate in Conversation Room. We're really honored to join your program. I would like to start by briefly framing our discussion today, the significance of this period for art and culture in Saudi Arabia. And within the tidal wave of development in culture and the vast landscapes they encompass, from the magnificent UNESCO World Heritage Site, Al-Ula, to new museums being built across the country. The busy winter season hails the imminent inaugurations of new institutions, amongst them Hayy Jameel and the Ad-Diriyah Biennale, which represent something of a watershed for access to art for the capital, Riyadh, and Jeddah, Saudi Arabia's port city on the Red Sea, the historic gateway for trade and pilgrims. It's important to contextualize this moment by acknowledging the diverse community of artists, private initiatives, galleries, and patrons who have been active in producing and supporting art in Saudi Arabia for decades, and fostering local and international engagement with this ecosystem. There is now, however, unprecedented government focus on expanding the creative sector, building infrastructure, audiences, and institutions for creative disciplines. And as a result, Saudi Arabia has entered a new era where the idea of art in the public realm, its recognized potency, is key not only to projects and cultural development, but as a part of the government's Vision 2030 strategy to give economic opportunity and quality of life to Saudi's youthful population. So there's real optimism and momentum to being able to build ideas, policies, institutions, not only with hindsight, but being able to shape and set new precedents, creating organic, authentic models that speak of their context rather than adopting older or culturally less relevant ones. And it's a privilege and my pleasure to have Hayy Al-Bakri, Manal AlDowayan, Sara Al-Omran join us today and to share their insights about it all. They offer a particular opportunity for us to understand how synergies and efforts shared between them are emblematic of a committed, connected new generation of cultural practitioners making leaps in a booming nationwide commitment to culture in Saudi Arabia. So with that in mind, Sara and I'd like to start by asking you if you can tell us about your institutions, Hayy Jameel and the Ad-Diriyah Biennale Foundation. And as a second part to the question, as you lay foundations for these organizations, what have the key priorities specific to their context in Saudi Arabia been?
Thank you, Zain. Thank you very much, Victoria. It's a great pleasure to be participating in this panel and talking at this particular moment, just 6 weeks away from the opening of both Hayy Jameel and the Ad-Diriyah Biennale. Just to give a little bit of a background, and as you said, Zain, it's important to sort of really consider the context and sort of the unique models that we're setting up for the ecosystems that we're, that we're operating in. For Hayy Jameel, it's a community hub that sort of brings a wide range of creative disciplines under one roof. It's a space that's 17,000 square meters, and sort of that offers spaces that are kind of occupied by different creative enterprises and cultural organizations that are homegrown in Jeddah, as well as 4 sort of spaces that are run by Art Jameel, that are sort of anchored within the space itself. So it's kind of a neighborhood. The name Hayy is actually neighborhood in Arabic. And sort of that, sort of the building is kind of the focus of the initiative is to support and nurture artists, creatives, filmmakers, and creative entrepreneurs, and sort of reflects Art Jameel's mission. So Art Jameel is the organization that's behind Hayy Jameel. It's the organization that's founded it and will operate it after its inauguration in 6 weeks from today. So we've been working on this for multiple years now, and sort of it's kind of a continuation of the legacy that Art Jameel has sort of built. So Art Jameel's role as an organization that fosters the role of the arts in society, and that has been active in Saudi for many years. So we've, as an organization, we've been supporting art practices for multiple years. I mean, we've had a long-standing relationship with Manal, for example, through programs, fellowships, and other initiatives. And so the opening of Hayy Jameel is sort of really, kind of acting like a homecoming and sort of an evolution of that, kind of that heritage and that legacy, and a way for us to kind of expand that, and in a way that, kind of the sector is ready for this moment. So while Hayy has kind of been something that's been in the works for multiple years, this is really the right moment. We're at a level of maturity as a sector that warrants this kind of investment, and this, and kind of this sort of the support system that this institution will bring. So that's kind of Hayy Jameel. I'm sure Aya, you can tell us a little bit more also about how Ad-Diriyah is also coming at this particular moment.
I'm going to share, and I'm going to return to images of Hayy Jameel also. I'm just going to do that right now. This is Hayy that Sara was just telling us about. We'll return to, and here are images of Ad-Diriyah.
Thanks, Sara. Thanks, Zain. And again, thank you so much, everyone, and Fiak and the team for putting this together. I know this was this is kind of a new kind of dialogue, especially online. But thank you to the digital world for making this easy on all of us. So for Ad-Diriyah Biennale, I mean, we're basically kind of a catalyst for global dialogue between growing diverse art communities in Saudi Arabia and the world. We're putting together two different biennales, alternating. The first year, obviously, in December, inshallah, this December 2021, will be the Contemporary Art Biennale, and the 2022 edition will be focused on Islamic arts in Jeddah, inshallah, hopefully. So, it's kind of it's a foundation that has, so many, that we're doing so many different things. We have a lot of spaces as well that will be exhibition spaces for the biennales, but then ongoing exhibitions throughout the year and programming. We really want to make sure that we, continue and have an ongoing program for the rest of the year, whilst working on the next biennial. And we want to kind of focus on different timelines of art, I would say. So, the contemporary, we really want to be part of every kind of art kind of engagement, I would say. So the contemporary art edition is curated by Philip Tenari, and then the Islamic arts edition will be announced very soon in terms of the curatorial team and the spaces, etc. And we really want to make sure that everybody is also part of this initiative. So, for the rest of the year, we have spaces that are going to be kind of programmed with other institutions or entities in order to make sure that everybody is using these spaces as exhibition spaces. So if you guys can see on the screen, it's kind of done in a way where it's kind of modular. So, you know, when we kind of remove the exhibition, we'll be able to create smaller exhibitions in that space, and hopefully always keep the community engaged and everybody, you know, welcome to come and see the spaces and attend our programs and attend our talks and our panels and everything. So that's for us. That's kind of where we are. We're doing a lot of different things at the same time, and we love it. And that's the Riyadh Biennale Foundation for you.
If I can return quickly to Sara, what you were telling us about Hayy, and show some of the images that you've shared with us for people to get a sense of the different spaces ready to welcome partners. You'll be having a Saudi Arabia's first art house cinema, I believe, which is extraordinary. I believe will you be having a comedy center? Is that correct?
That's right. So yeah, thank you, Zain. So yeah, just to kind of sort of clarify the layout of the space, because it sort of acts as a community hub, the different spaces around the complex. So there's a central courtyard in the middle where kind of all the spaces open up, and the images are from a couple of months ago. So the development looks a little more kind of, the trees are a little longer now, and the floors are kind of inserted. But I mean, yeah, it's very much kind of a work in progress. So we have 7 or 8 different cultural enterprises and creative enterprises moving into the site, including, as you said, Zain, a comedy club, art galleries, a baking school, and architecture studios. As Art Jameel, we're running about half of the building through our own program. So that's anchored in sort of the building that you see on the right, Hayy Arts, which is the site of, and the kind of the space that will host contemporary art exhibitions, design exhibitions, architecture exhibitions, a very much a multidisciplinary space with a rotating exhibitions program. On the opposite side of Hayy Arts is Hayy Cinema on the left-hand side. And as you said, Zain, that is actually more of an audiovisual center with 2 screens, a library that's dedicated to audiovisual content, and sort of learning resources for filmmakers and practitioners that are interested in sort of content about cinema. So it really functions as a kind of also a learning space and a kind of a research center for filmmakers and cinephiles as well. We also have a kind of a multi-purpose space just opposite the courtyard, and that sort of acts as a white canvas for all sorts of activations and events throughout the site. So this could be events that we hold with our tenants, who we call residents, or kind of other kind of organizations and that might want to kind of hold something in that space. So everything really from kind of a food market through to kind of touring exhibitions, pop-up galleries, you know, kind of, what was that?
Civic space with a civic purpose.
Exactly. And then in the top floor, kind of the roof spaces are artist studios. So those are studios that will host residency programs that we will deliver. So inviting artists from Jeddah, artists from across the country, and artists from beyond to come and sort of, you know, anchor themselves in this space for 6 to 12 months and sort of, while using the space, delivering community programs and sort of engaging with the community through the spaces here as well.
And I wonder, you know, there's, as I mentioned, there have been communities very active in art in Saudi Arabia for decades, and it's a young country. But something new, there's a momentum that we're seeing and that we're witnessing, and we can sort of barely keep up in the understanding. And of course, in 2019, it became possible for people to get visas, visit more easily. And Saudi Arabia is ready to welcome people, and both Riyadh and Jeddah have ambitions not only to be amongst the top 100 most livable cities, but very real destinations for people around the world to come and enjoy. And I wonder, are these amongst the changes that have paved the way for institutions like yours, Diriyah with Ad-Diriyah and Hayy? Are there other changes that have been in the works to make this moment possible? That's a tricky question. if there is an easy answer to that.
Yeah, I think, you know, for us, as I mentioned earlier, this is an organization, this is a sort of an idea, that idea of Hayy has been there for years, I think before 2013, but it was really something that was only really kind of took form in the way that you know, that it's sort of shaping up to be now because of the transformational changes that are happening. So over the last 3 to 4 years, you know, whether, you know, there have been several changes across policy, the level and the sort of sheer scale of investment in arts and culture, as well as just the general sense among sort of the community of sort of a bigger appreciation for the role that art can play in sort of our lives. So I think all of these coming together sort of really created the right moment for organizations like ours, and I maybe biennales as well, like the ones that Hayy is working on and Manal is participating in, to sort of take shape in this way.
Well, maybe this is a moment for me to draw Manal in, unless I wanted to make an addition to Sara's point. But Manal, of course, as an artist who's been practicing for a long time, before many of these new infrastructures for the arts came into play, and who's experienced and are experiencing now the evolution of Saudi's cultural landscape. How have these developments impacted your practice and work, and perhaps some of you know, those of your artist peers, if you have common experiences you would share? What does this moment mean for your work?
Well, Zain, working as an artist, not for a very, very long time, but just for about 16 years, which I think is quite short. It flew too quickly. At the very beginnings, or let's say before this huge investment in art and culture within the region, it was more of a grassroots effort. We used to, as artists, do it ourselves. And then eventually it evolved to a community support. So, you know, other than the artists that were trying to hang their own artworks and print out their own flyers, then the people who love art started sort of helping us, giving us their spaces, investing their money in creating exhibitions for us. For example, the community that helped us make 2139 was sort of a survival beacon for a lot of artists for many years, as a space that was our only place where we would get commissioned to make artworks and feel like we're exhibiting with institutional mindset. So we would have invited curators and whatnot. Now it's very, very different. And I equate it sometimes to an artwork I made several years ago called If I Forget You, Don't Forget Me, which was documenting the oil men and women who worked in Saudi Aramco. And in the majority of those interviews, when I spoke to people about how they felt oil had changed their lives, they basically responded that their dreams were coming true. And this is now a moment for everybody that sort of invested sweat and tears into their practice as artists or as art lovers, supporting us, sweeping the floors for us when we were about to hang a show, or flying us out to attend events and throwing us dinners and promoting us among other collectors. Our gallerists who really struggled to get our works out to a very small group of collectors. Now is a time, like the former oil men and women, our dreams are coming true. And that's how I feel this moment is.
That's really poignant. And there is a collaborative sense, although, you know, you're speaking about formerly private initiatives, there is a huge collaborative sense between the public and the private sector, you know, with a huge enabling force, obviously coming from government support now. And I was wondering, you know, of course, we have here the balance, we have the most significant private initiative and philanthropic family agency through Art Jameel, and we have, of course, Hayy, who's with the Ministry of Culture. But I wonder, how do private and public sector institutions contribute to the wider ecosystem? And is there a spirit of independent complementarity? Are there opportunities to intersect? Are there obvious opportunities to intersect? I know that, you know, private initiatives have been called on maybe to advise different political entities on how they can collect, and various ways forward to work together and to partner. Are there any that come to mind and that you're currently developing? Maybe I can ask Sara to address that one.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a combination of both, Zain. There is kind of a sort of a complementary role, and there is kind of a collaborative role. So, you know, we are operating also at different sort of spheres in a way. So the, you know, the kind of government support is, or sort of the government structure is necessary to really create a change on a national level. So, you know, creating the environment for this ecosystem to thrive. Whether by kind of sort of initiating policy or just really setting the models of how institutions can set up and, you know, in this kind of new landscape. And at the same time, also launching large scale programs like the scholarship program the Ministry of Culture launched a couple of years ago that, you know, sort of allows graduates, high school graduates to pursue degrees in the arts. And these kind of collaborations with the Ministry of Education and in terms of influencing curriculum and you know, kind of other initiatives that, you know, that you need the Ministry of Culture to sort of operate in that level, and only kind of government organizations are able to do that. But as you said, I think that happens often in sort of based on a dialogue with the private organizations and sort of not-for-profit initiatives and organizations. So we're often in dialogue with the Ministry of Culture about, you know, what sort of changes would they, you know, kind of borrowing from our experience, kind of relaying sort of our experiences and seeing how some of their initiatives could be supported on the ground with other kind of efforts that we would be leading as well. As an independent organization that's privately funded, we are operating at a slightly different level. Of course, we have sort of more, I guess, direct relationship with the artists and grassroots initiatives, and we're able to kind of really imagine collaborations in maybe a more involved way. As you know, when I think about Hayy Jameel, for example, our first exhibition is co-curated with Delphina Foundation. So sort of this kind of co-curation, sort of co-programming is something that we do quite often. It's very much in the ethos of what Art Jameel does. So we often work with organizations in that way, sort of thinking about new programs that we can do together. So it's a much more kind of closer collaborative approach in terms of developing content. And I think also with our tenants, so our residents who are moving into Hayy, you know, we're sharing audiences by kind of this proximity of coming close to each other. So there's kind of this symbiotic relationship that we're able to do with other kind of private, smaller initiatives as well. So I think it's kind of it's sort of a different relationship when, and it kind of, it comes kind of in full circle in a way. So you need sort of people playing their own roles to be able to kind of, to create a sort of a healthy ecosystem.
And with that in mind, you know, this community that you're generating, I know that community engagement is really critical and a key aim for public organizations. Are you speaking to existing audiences, or are you cultivating new ones with the organizations, with the institutions that you're establishing now? And what are some of the maybe the short and long-term goals that you have for depth of engagement and impact? Because I know that's a significant thing that institutions are always trying to measure, and particularly at this time where things are developing so dramatically. I wonder if you have strategies for that. I know that community engagement is really important to.
Yeah. So I mean, just to kind of to Sara's point as well, I feel like I think our role as institutions is to really be, you know, very engaging and very welcoming to, you know, whether it's private sector or specific kind of organizations, to work together and empower them. So, you know, you know, with a lot of the changes that have been happening, and I, you know, with our senior leadership and, you know, the Vision 2030, it helps a lot in kind of making sure that, you know, whether it's you know, visitors being able to come to Saudi to attend all of these, you know, exhibitions or visit any of these institutions, to actually being able to collaborate and work with different entities, etc. So, you know, we're also working with the UCCA, Philip Tanari, to curate the show. We want to also really engage with the public when it comes to the public program as well. So to your point, Zain, in terms of engagement, I think it's something that's a core, value that we have in terms of as a foundation and as an institution. So I think it's small things that are, throughout everything we do. And I think it's whether it's in the show itself, whether it's an experience, through experiencing the works and speaking to the audiences and making sure the visitor experience is kind of end-to-end, kind of experiential, I would say, whether it's also in the public program and kind of giving sort of this community feel and giving, different talks, different panels, different master classes, et cetera, to really make sure that we're super kind of engaged with everybody and talking to everyone and welcoming everyone to the biennial. It's a free show for 3 months. We want to make sure everybody is able to attend, bring their families and bring their loved ones and really experience the whole, show and space and really enjoy it in every way possible. So, community engagement is something that I think is throughout everything we do and ongoing, and not only during the biennial for 3 months. So even, after, and, how we even do our marketing or how we do any of our social media, interactions, it's really important to make sure that everybody is kind of super involved and engaged and able to give their thoughts and interact with the works and interact with everybody in the spaces. And with us as a foundation. So we really want to make sure that whether it's private sector organizations or institutions, that we're super collaborative and working together, because I think that's the really important part. And I think institutions like Jameel or 2139 really kind of paved the way for us in terms of also with everything that they've done before. And I think we have so much respect for them, and we want to always make sure that we're always all on the same helping each other out and collaborating. I think that's a really important thing that we want to make sure we do.
Well, you've answered one of the questions I was going to ask next about what it means as a having visited biennales around the world, participated in biennales. What does it mean to have a biennale in the context of Saudi? So you've already addressed that point, but I want to address it to Manal, who of course has participated in biennales around the world, is opening a work in has just opened a new work in a biennale in Japan. I am sure it means something different to be shown institutionally at home and to be participating. This, of course, in fact, your artist list was just announced, and I'm going to put it up on the shared screen now and show some of Manal's works. But Manal, maybe you can tell us.
Before Manal jumps in, honestly, we're so excited to have Manal as one of our participating artists. I mean, I can't tell you how happy I was for us to be able to actually communicate the artist list now when we were just at Freeze. So I'm so happy we're able to actually just, talk about it. But I just want to say that Manal, we're so happy that you're part of the exhibition, especially it's the first time, and it's really important for us that you're a part of it.
Well, Zain, this is a question that I always get asked, even just for exhibiting works. What's the difference between exhibiting your work among your countrymen or the people who speak your language or have lived your experiences versus showing works in countries as a visiting artist or as an international artist? And it also applies today within the Biennale scene, which is a very different audience and less commercial, not like art fairs, but it's much more general audience, people who maybe have not seen art before, and it is super exciting. The one thing that I found coming to Saudi Arabia, being hosted as the artist of the local artist, basically, is just a unique experience. It's the first time I do it. And so it comes with all the newness that participating in any exhibition, and the newness of being home I'm going to be showing an artwork that was developed in the past. It's not a new work, but it is the first time it's shown in this form. I chose to exhibit an artwork that is participatory, which is a line of work that I do within my practice, which involves hundreds of women. And I used to take my kit of artworks and assistants and, drive across Saudi Arabia from the east to the west and invite women to participate in building my artwork. This was in a time when most of the women that participated did not understand what contemporary art is. They did not understand the commercial ecosystem of the art world, but they did understand that there is a visual language, and to have an artist sort of communicate the general ideas and feelings. I was communicating my personal feelings, but they were sort of assisting me in building this idea as a collective. I think was a very poignant moment. And this work it was commissioned for 2139, but it was not shown in its entirety because it was very limited back then when we were putting together exhibitions. I hung my own artwork. I brought in food and people were filling out. So the artwork I'm presenting is called Tree of Guardians, where we address when do women disappear from memory. And I invited women to draw matriarchal family trees and then see up until what generation do they stop remembering the names of the women in their families. Now, this artwork, the drawings were never shown. And they've been shown in the Netherlands, in San Francisco, in America. They've been shown all over the world, in London too. And now finally, these drawings are going to come home. And I am so excited to see the reaction of the women who participated in this artwork back when I was just a crazy person running around with my boxes and like these trunks behind me, as you see them. The blue trunk is part of the Tree of Guardians work. And, I'd run around the whole of the country and now it's coming home. Also, I have to highlight and appreciate what Ad-Diriyah Biennale, the quality. I feel very spoiled. Like I cannot now do any other Biennale after this Biennale because of the incredible support, the scenography, the design, the art handlers. This is the first time I participate in a Biennale and not have to be there physically to install my work because it's done. It's done. And I'm very appreciative of the curators and the vision that they brought to us, which is Philip Tenari's vision. Someone who is bringing we're working with a curator that's coming from the East, whereas traditionally most of the curators that we work with, almost all of them, are either local or from the West. And so I'm very excited to engage in these new ideas, meet new artists. And I think the majority of artists in Saudi Arabia and the art practitioners and art lovers are looking forward to this kind of engagement. The only issue is there's too many events happening, including the film festivals, including, there's just so much that a lot of, we're missing out on each other's events as artists and as art lovers. But in the end, I think they have a long term, so it's about 3 months. That means we have to really book our calendars for this season every year. This is new for us, so we haven't booked anything. My calendar is still being formed, but I think moving forward, there will be a very, very important art season for us as artists that, I can't do anything anymore between December and March because I want to be home. I want to be attending the new film releases and the Red Sea Film Festival. I want to see what the Biennales have to present. I want to see what new artists and old artists have to say about the themes that we're bringing into our country.
Manal, you're touching on so many points that I want to return to, so I'm going to have to make a note of them. Really, you've touched on community engagement, which is a work so intrinsic and so crucial to institutions, but you've been doing it for so many years as a participatory, as an artist who focuses on participatory work. And I have so many questions I want to ask you about how you imagine those communities of women, many of whom are artists or artisans in their own right, how these changes will impact them and trickle down. But I skirted quickly through your some of your artworks. And I want to, while we're talking about being home, ask you, you know, when we talk about new cultural landscapes, I have a trinity of extraordinary women. Of course, there were other people who deserve to be here too, talking about their projects and their areas within Saudi Arabia. But I want to ask you, as an artist who is developing key commissions exhibited with major institutions across the country, such as MISC, such as the Royal Commission for Al-Ula, you know, just to name a couple. And I hope it's not too much of you to ask, but can you speak to the nuances in the motivations? You know, each initiative has a very specific mission. There are so many of them, but can you speak to the nuance of some of these different entities and the museum landscape that's forthcoming? And I'm showing here this extraordinary work, Now You See Me, Now You Don't, that you were commissioned to make for Desert X in Al-Ula just before the world closed down for business in January 2020. So can you talk to us a little bit about the new museum culture that's coming and being collected by institutions at home?
I can only speak of my personal experience. I'm not sure if this is something that is a policy that they have, or it's implemented in some kind of somewhere in some realm. But for me, the approach has always been that, including the Royal Commission of Al-Ula, reaching out to me as an artist and asking me to create work that really interacts, engages the local community. And this is sort of, it's part of my belief system, it's part of my practice in my studio, that an artwork needs to have an engagement and an exchange with the community it lands within. And so people do not want to be mere observers. People do not want to be just receivers of information, of artworks they do not understand. And I think this is, I think it's happening globally. You saw my other artworks in Japan, and I have the same artwork, these trampolines, Now You See Me, have been installed in South Korea. Japan's work was a complete work that was built by the community for me. And I made this work as a backdrop for a Shinto shrine in the Northern Alps of Omachi, Japan. The rice hay was cultivated last year. So they had to, the whole farming community gathered it for me, dried it, and allowed it. And then we brought in the master weavers, and then all the young people came in and created these beautiful sacred braids that usually exist around shrines, but I've used them in a very different way. The centerpiece was also made out of Japanese paper, which is now a UNESCO protected heritage craft. And this is sort of the way to go, is to work within the community, use the language that they understand. And yesterday there was a sort of a festival around the shrine, and the community requested to use this artwork as the backdrop for their festival. They sang, they danced, and this is basically the main way I work. And I can only work this way because I wouldn't want to be treated as just a person that needs to be fed something. I want to engage and think about what I'm looking at and have a conversation with the artist through their work. So yes, participatory work is very important.
I wish we could go to all these places. I wish travel was a little easier right now. But speaking of which, and of course that transitional period, that last moment where we were all able to walk through the desert in Al-Ula to interpret and to engage the different works that we saw at Desert X, we have now experienced extended periods where we couldn't occupy public space at all. And however much we now seek in-person experiences, we have different expectations. We have developed virtual habits. And this is a challenge, of course, for institutions everywhere in the world, but Saudi Arabia's population is very young. So I think 2/3 are under 35 years old. They're savvy, and their digital realms have been widened. And, you know, as institutions, as artists, as practitioners, our institutional realms have been widened, and our audiences have dramatically expanded. So as institutions, and I know Jameel has been incredibly active, and I'm sure Hayy will be also, and I'm sure Aya, you have some strategies in mind, but how much of what you will be doing will be technologically driven? And is this something you believe is temporary, or is this something permanent that you're planning for, that you accept is here to stay and part of your content and programming as you move forward? I direct this to the institutional reps.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. And I think what COVID has taught us is how the digital space was a massively underutilized space. And I think, you know, when COVID first started, we were just about to launch a curatorial fellowship where we were getting 3 different curators, emerging curators from Saudi, to sort of start a fellowship program that would start in Jameel Art Center in Dubai, and then move to Hayy Jameel, and sort of back to Jameel Art Center, and sort of between these 2 places. With the pandemic, we had to shift that online, and that really kind of, you know, completely changed the format, because obviously we couldn't really gather anywhere, and had to kind of conduct the program online. And that, you know, in the beginning, it seemed like a challenge, and we weren't really sure about how that could work, but it actually really opened us to open our eyes to new opportunities. I think, you know, because it was online, we were able to bring in interlocutors and sort of mentors and people from around the world to contribute to the conversation, and to sort of these seminars that we hosted online. So I think, you know, it really kind of opened up our eyes to this idea of the digital could really allow you to kind of have conversations and dialogues with people that you wouldn't necessarily access, you know, as easily, while still being rooted. It doesn't mean that everything has to sort of operate on a global level. You can still sort of merge it with sort of programs that happen on site. So yeah, as you said, as an organization, we've been sort of really looking at how can we sort of look at the digital as a third space in a way, so as a sort of a new venue, but at the same time also considering how at the same time we can make sure that the conversation is rooted, and that we are able to kind of continue that dialogue that allows us to sustain ourselves as organizations. So yeah, early days, but definitely a very interesting space that we're looking at. There's also the digital commission that we launched in the early days, where we invited artists to create a work that would, you know, primarily exist online, which was something that was also quite a great, you know, an amazing experience. Nadeem Shoufi was the person we commissioned. So with Hayy, we're looking to kind of take that further. You know, and we were also starting to think about, while we're anchored in Jeddah, how can we reach communities that are slightly more difficult to reach? So smaller neighborhoods, smaller sort of towns or across the country, and whether there's something that we can do there to sort of combine, you know, our Jeddah presence with an online program that engages people in sort of slightly more areas that are underserved in a way.
Thank you, Sara. And Aya, these plans, are these concerns that you are addressing through the Biennale programming as well, for people who might perhaps not be able to make it this edition, or will be delayed, or people who are in different parts of the country who want to be able to attend your programming as it continues for the duration of the Biennale?
Thank you, Zain. Honestly, I feel like it's been a tough year on everyone, but I have to say, I have to thank the digital world for making it a lot easier for us to be able to make sure that, you know, the curators and the artists are talking. It's opened a lot of new. It opened our eyes, I think, to the fact that, you know, the digital world is actually super kind of facilitates a lot of things. So a lot of the interaction that we had with a lot of these different artists or institutions or the curatorial team, or between Wajdan Rida, who's the assistant curator, and Philip, and them talking to each other all the time and making sure that they're engaged with all of the artists. The digital world really helped us do that properly and extensively, I would say, even with working with the artists. In terms of the, we're a very tech savvy audience, and very digitally fluent, honestly, as Saudis, and I think a lot of different communities are as well. So a lot of the programming will be online in terms of the talks, the panels, everything will probably be, will hopefully be live streamed. We'll have a lot of the images of the works, but we invite, because it's been a tough year on everyone, we invite that everybody comes in or comes to Saudi to be able to experience this firsthand physically. It's on for 3 months. We are going to try to make sure that it's super easy to get here and super accessible, and we want to make sure that everybody is able to experience them physically, but we'll also have a lot of the programming online, and everything also accessible online. But we really want to invite everybody to come in, even if it's just for a few days, to just see the exhibition and experience the whole thing. And we're going to have ongoing things, and like programs different times in throughout the 3 months, so to make sure that everybody is able to join.
Well, it sounds like there's so much happening. We have every reason to come and spend a significant period of time exploring all of it. And I want to go back to Manal's point about the sort of depth and breadth of activity, and also going back to education, because in the discussions that we've had leading up to this conversation today, there's so many different groups that exist throughout Saudi that look to be addressed, and there is a wealth of activity happening at almost supersonic speed. It's extraordinary, and I mean, part of the aim of this conversation, and we're barely able to scratch the surface really in an hour once we talk about your extraordinary practices, is what's happening across the country. And the reality is, even I think working day in, day out within that context, it's a challenge to stay on top of everything that's happening. And I wonder, one of the inevitable challenges as well as opportunities of these developments, and one of the responsibilities then perhaps of education and all of the new institutions that will be opening and will become potential workplaces, civic spaces for young people who want to live a life in art and culture. How do you approach this extraordinary breadth as colleagues remaining connected? And how do you approach capacity building, which I'm sure is part of the mandate of pretty much every public institution, whether it's privately initiated, whether it's public? How do you approach that capacity building, and how do you approach the appetite for learning and the appetite for study? Of course, there are education initiatives across the country, but perhaps they are not as yet aligned with the ambition of the vision for culture in Saudi Arabia. So I'm sorry, there are several questions in that. One is, how do you stay connected? How do you build capacity for the ambitious, for the expectation of quality that you all put out? And how do, I know that you all have educational interests. Manal has been a tutor at Hayy. You all have educational arms, but how do you address and help to reduce the gap in what is now and what is required of the ambition?
If I may, Zain, I think we're all doing everything we can to make sure that we really try to fill that gap. And I think no matter where, or even, you know, where we start, it's always something that should always be there and always should grow. I don't think, no matter what we do, whether it's us or whether it's, you know, institutions like Hayy, I think even if we overdo a lot of that, it's still not enough. Our audiences are super ready and super engaged and super interested, that it really gives us a nice like push and motivation to do more and make sure that we have a lot of kind of learning experiences for everyone to be able to be a part of. I don't think it's a I think we do it as we go, and I think we I feel like we're very privileged to be able to deal with a very, very engaging audience and super ready to take everything in and really be part of everything and ask so many questions and be so inquisitive. It's so refreshing. So from our end, I feel like we're doing it as we go, and it's, alhamdulillah, it's been so nice and so easy, and honestly, like, I'm very grateful for that, honestly.
Thank you, Aya. I feel like this is a question for all of you. Sara, if you would.
Yeah, sure. And I'd love for Manal to also comment as a former tutor and then always a teacher to the, you know, kind of to emerging artists. For Hayy Jameel and Art Jameel in general, learning is really kind of fundamental to our work. And I think it's a response to what you said, Zain, about sort of really kind of seeing the changes that are happening and the new opportunities and biennales and exhibitions and sort of kind of all of these opportunities that are offered, and making sure that people are able to kind of really kind of take advantage of these new opportunities and platforms. In a way, it's also, as Aya was saying, it needs to be responsive, right? So it's also making sure that the learning programs that you're doing, the forums that you're creating are something that fits with the local context, that it's not an imported model. So Hayy Learning, one of the first programs that we launched even before the opening of Hayy, we started the first Hayy Learning program in 2019, and it was very much kind of a response to this kind of new sort of kind of transformational sort of energy that's kind of happening in the arts and culture sector. So it was a program that was designed in a way that would help artists take advantage of what's going on, and in terms of opportunities, equipping them with the sort of the skills, practical skills that can help them navigate the landscape. So that program included things like how to sort of write an artist statement, how to deal with contracts, how to build a budget, also kind of having sort of crit sessions built in within it. So they're also have that sort of ability to kind of share and learn from each other, and sort of also kind of have a moment to kind of pause and discuss what's going on. And so no Hayy Learning sort of program after that was the same. So we constantly sort of change the format, change sort of the focus areas based on sort of the kind of the sort of the needs that we see at the time. But we also kind of try to carry that out even beyond the learning program. So the opening exhibition staple is also sort of within that process, there was kind of a research sort of strand to it called the Food Lab that kind of engaged with local researchers, scientists, food anthropologists to sort of discuss and kind of offer sort of a kind of a wider and a broader conversation to sort of make sure that artists are also kind of having these opportunities and conversations with practitioners beyond just sort of their peers and the curators and sort of the immediate circle of people around us. So it's sort of really kind of also carrying that out to the audiences, and back to what you were saying about engaging communities and audiences. It's also kind of making sure that the public program and the workshops are something that create that engagement and sort of bridge these kind of opportunities and conversations between what's sort of being what the artworks and the exhibitions are talking about, but also kind of the wider conversations that's happening at the city level as well. Manal, over to you to also comment on that.
Sara.
Well, for me, Sara and Aya, what you guys are doing is an amazing space to complement academia. I was an artist that was self-taught for many, many years until I eventually put myself through university. at a very late age, only because I needed that structure of academic education. And for sure, all kinds of learning and training programs that I had experienced even when I was living in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, nothing compares to university education for artists, and university education that is actually close to the artist. So I went to a school in London, the Royal College of Art, where most of the teaching was very Eurocentric, which of course it should be. It is their national university, but our universities, I sit on the board of 2 universities in Saudi Arabia. I see up close. I work with young artists, fresh graduates that are part of my teams in different ways, and I hear from them. And I know that we are very slow academically. This is lacking, and I think the private sector and the Biennale and the artists are, moving at light speed while academia is lagging. Now, that doesn't mean that it's being ignored. I've spoken to friends who are on the ground in Saudi Arabia. Artists are being brought in to develop programs for heritage kind of teaching, the crafts schools, and these are academic artists that help develop academic programs, not just short term. These are long-term, research-based. We need more writers, we need critical thinking, we need knowledge content produced at an academic level that represents our region. So it's no longer just let's take a workshop here, a workshop there, and see what happens. There has to be a more focused, and I believe Jameel Foundation is a big, and MISC Institute are 2 main elements that have been sort of pushing themselves towards this academic direction by encouraging development of publications, encouraging writing, and these are very important. But without the support of academic institutions that are in the equal standing in the intelligence and their approach and their knowledge of contemporary stuff, not like, let's go back to the books of 20 years. It doesn't work that way anymore. So that's my small criticism of, academia needs to move faster. But, I'm married to an academic, and I know they are all very slow and very specific about their work. And us who are quite dynamic, that work in this kind of environment, we need to drag them along with us.
I would add one more thing to what you're saying, Manal, as well, is also kind of what you said about critical thinking, is to also work with the youth and children. So another thing that we're also kind of concerned with, and a conversation that we constantly have at Art Jameel, is how can we develop these skills even sooner? So in order for them to get to the academic programs and to benefit from the scholarship programs, that sort of skill set needs to be developed sooner, and that appreciation and kind of understanding of the role of the arts it needs to kind of be built sooner. So, for us, a big focus is the 18 to 13-year-olds and sort of the 13 to 17-year-olds. So with Hayy, some of the programs that we're planning at the moment includes other sort of the engagement programs that are linked to the exhibitions, but also kind of learning programs that are centered in the cinema, that would invite children to kind of look at the film program that we have to sort of develop the critical skills and the cinema language that would sort of, again, allow them to kind of engage in a sort of a deeper way, and to prepare and to sort of get engaged with the making process as well. So that when they get to the academic level, as you said, at kind of the university level, that they have that sort of background and experience, and then able to kind of contribute portfolios and works in their applications.
I wish we had another hour, and I wanted to ask one more question or make one more point, but we have only 1 more minute. And I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity to speak with all of you and to do it through FIAC's amazing platform. I don't think I'm going to conclude, but Victoria, thank you so much. I have so much I want to continue with, but all of you, thank you so much for your insights and for your energy and generosity in sharing with us today. Thank you, Sara, Manal, and Hayy. And looking forward to seeing you
so much. Thank you for finishing on that note. And thank you so much, ladies, for participating. This was both very informational and extremely inspirational. Thank you, Zain, for moderating so brilliantly. Thank you, Sara, for telling us about Hayy, the program and the way Hayy is planning of engaging with the public. I'm sure everyone is extremely excited to visit Jeddah's creative community. Thank you, Hayy Al-Bakri, for participating. To bounce back on what you said, we're very grateful as well for the audience we have hopefully here at the conversation room, and it's important to be. Manal, what to say? The way you explain the Biennale and the way it's being prepared is so inspiring and encouraging for all to visit and come visiting starting December. And thank you, Manal, for being such a superb artist, engaging with the public the way you do. Hayy, thank the digital world earlier. I'd like to do the same. It's great to have this conversation here happening, and I hope everyone enjoyed. Thank you for everyone that participated from behind their screen, and see you at the next discussion.